Welcome to NewYorkBIO's Virtual Breakfast Series, a digital program started in 2020, bringing you fireside chats with leaders from across the healthcare spectrum. This week's episode features Christina Orsi, the Associate Vice President for Economic Development at the University of Buffalo.
All right, I have 9:01. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hawks-Bland, and I'm the CEO at NewYorkBIO. We're thrilled you're here today for another installment of our virtual breakfast series. We have an amazing guest from Buffalo. Christina Orsi is with us today. And so we'll get to talk a lot more with her. I would be remiss if I didn't thank VWR, our sponsor for this month. And even more remiss if I did not plug our annual meeting, which is coming up. It's hard to believe we're in September now, and our annual meeting is September 27th. All the info is on our website at NewYorkBIO.org. So we hope you will plan to join us either in person in Manhattan or virtually. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it. Oh, sorry, I almost always forget this housekeeping. So if you have questions for Christina during the course of our conversation, and we hope you do, please put those questions either in the Q&A box or in the chat. And Derek and I will see them during the conversation and be able to ask them to Christina. So with that, I will turn it over to Derek to do our more formal introduction of our guest today. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jennifer, and good morning, everybody. I hope everybody had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Christina, it's great to see you. And, we're excited today because, we're a statewide organization, and we've been watching how fantastic Buffalo has been doing. And, honestly, you've been really a driver of, innovation in the region for most of your career. So we're really excited to talk to you this morning. So we tend to kick off the discussion with a bit of an origin story from our guests. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about, how you got where you are today?
Well, good morning, Derek and Jennifer and everyone else on. Nice to see you this morning. Glad to be here. I'm also going to apologize. I'm working from home. So if FedEx shows up at the door and the dog starts barking, I think we've all been there by now. It inevitably happens when I'm on webinars. So anyway, yeah, so I have spent my career in the Buffalo, Western New York area in economic development. I actually went to University of Buffalo as a graduate student in urban planning and public policy, and that sort of started my trajectory. But I started out working for the Buffalo Niagara partnership, the Chamber of Commerce, more on policy, and then transitioned to work for the Buffalo Niagara Enterprise, now called Invest Buffalo Niagara. Quite a few years ago. And really the focus then was on trying to attract companies and investment to the area. And just for a bit of context, you have to recall that Western New York, like most of upstate New York, went through really, 30 years of decline. And that's because we were such a heavy industry, manufacturing, very heavy manufacturing, overly concentrated, frankly. Back in the heydays in the 60s, and when steel and heavy industry started, closing and going offshore, we just went through a number of really hard economic years. And what resulted then was population decline as people moved away looking for other opportunities, right? So honestly, for the first probably 10 years in my role in economic development, I felt like I was just trying to, plug a hole in a leaky bucket where we were losing more than we were gaining.
Right.
But over time, what the region really did was it started to make strategic investments to really diversify its industry base. Certainly manufacturing, and now much more kind of advanced manufacturing is and will continue to be a core of our sector, but significant investments were made in growing, financial services sector, professional services sector, and the life sciences. Really several $1 billion was invested on what's called the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, kind of in the heart of downtown. Both expanding, Roswell Park Research Cancer Institute, the University of Buffalo, our, medical school, pharmacy school, public health grew over time. And then leveraging, those research assets to start to partner with companies. And over time, we really started to see growth in the life sciences sector, both from new emerging companies, but also existing growth companies, kind of across the board, from diagnostics to a strong medical device manufacturing sector to now a growing pharma biotech. So, you know, I shifted from kind of attracting and trying to bring new investment to the area to working for the state. And that's when we really focused on diversifying the economy. It was also the first time as a region, we really started to focus on growing from within. So catalyzing and supporting more startups. There was never a really strong entrepreneur ecosystem in Western New York. You know, there was not a lot of venture capital. There just weren't a lot of experienced entrepreneurs. There weren't sort of the foundational pieces to grow an entrepreneur community. We had extensive innovation and research and always did, but what happened is it would move away and start, you know, companies somewhere else. So, you know, at the state, we launched 43 North, a major business plan competition, and then ultimately invested in things like the Innovation Hub, all to really catalyze and put more comprehensive support around starting ventures in Western New York and growing them.
Hey, Christina, for context, how many, give us like some dates and like how many years ago, what was this? And just so that we're, because I mean, obviously the downward trend was steep, but the converse is true, right? Like the upward trend has been amazing.
Yeah. So it was probably about, 15 years ago that the regional, about 10 to 15 years ago, the regional kind of strategy where there was much more of a focus across, diversified sectors and growing those, with life sciences being one of them. And then two other things, the kind of entrepreneur focus and support services, but also a real emphasis on revitalizing the urban core and sort of smart growth and placemaking. And that's when investments in the waterfront, because we also wanted to make sure we had a place that would start to attract people back, because we had to turn around that population loss.
Right.
And when I was at, the state, I had the opportunity to work with UB quite a bit. The president, Satish Tripathi, was on the Economic Development Council. And, I really got a look into better understand the assets that were at the University of Buffalo from, 30,000 students, very large comprehensive research, significant life science, like I said, from a medical school to pharmacy to public health to dental, that were all growing. And, really realize that is a huge part of our future in innovation and entrepreneurship. And I had the opportunity to join UB leading their economic development. And it was just great timing, right? Because a lot of the basic services were starting to be put in place to enable more of that innovation to move to the market, right, and grow in Buffalo. And so it was a good opportunity to start to shift from working on, the state side to the university and catalyzing more innovation and startup creation.
So I guess, and help us, right, as, we talk a lot about with our other guests that are in, let's say, New York City, right? We talk a lot about them, about how the development of the city ecosystem and life sciences. Did you all have a full comprehensive, like, we need to attract young people that will want to live here and go to school here. We need to attract people that want to build companies here. I mean, like, how did you all go about figuring out, the old adage, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like, how did you figure out what your elephant looked like? And then how you were going to
So as a region, it was really when I was at the state, we developed, honestly, the first comprehensive regional economic development strategy. And it was based on assets that were clearly opportunities in three industry sectors. And that was, based on some of the investment in the innovation assets and life sciences. The second continued to be manufacturing, but more in some of the core that were more technology based. And then the third really was financial and professional services. So we chose kind of sectors that we knew we had assets in that we were going to double down on. And then we looked at, well, there's enabling things that cut across those. And one is we have to start more ventures locally and enable them to grow. Because the data told us that actually more businesses went out of business than were started each year historically. And we had to turn around that trend, right? And grow from within. And as you all know, most of the actual economic growth does come from new ventures and startups as they grow in a community. The second piece was smart growth. what had happened, again, like many upstate regions over the years, people moved out of the cities further and further into suburban and rural areas. And that really led to sprawl. And when you have population decline with sprawl, that's a bad combination, right?
Yeah.
Now you have all this infrastructure, you have, you know, overstock of housing in your urban area where people moved out. And so reinvesting in village centers and urban cores was critical, making them really, you know, vital places again where people wanted to move to. And we ultimately would attract, especially younger people, back to the community or to stay. And then the third piece was workforce. And so that was really at every level, right? Strategically, we knew, again, to enable job growth, we have to have the right high skilled workers.
Yeah.
And that means everything from, you know, on the manufacturing side, you need to have experienced welders and machinists to engineering talent, you know, and across the board. So reinvesting again in a lot of workforce kind of educational development was this kind of core enablers. And the region has steadily made investments. And actually for the first time, the census showed that the population grew in the Buffalo area in, I think, 50 years. So finally, it shows like the investments we've made in the strategy are paying off.
Well, that's great. And one of the reasons that I think this is really interesting is that you kind of didn't start with an obvious solution, right? It's not like you said, well, we have this world-class piece of infrastructure right here, let's just go build around it. You kind of had to build a plan that took everything into account. And now what's really interesting is looking at it through the lens now. You know, you have just a thriving sector in and around UB. Roswell Park is certainly one of the leading, cancer centers in the country, right? You've actually built these things up and really kind of established a leadership position in a lot of them, which, it kind of goes to show that if you have the right kind of strategic plan and you put the effort behind it and you build it, you can actually create these things if they don't exist. It's interesting. We think about where New York City has come from a lot, but New York City always started with, we have a wealth of academic institutions, we have all of these things are in place. And it's really kind of thinking about how do you use the stuff that's already there. It's a much different challenge when you say, okay, how do we build, right? How do we build? How do we take these numbers that are going in the direction that we don't want them to, and how do we actually put money and effort into the right places that allow you to build kind of step by step? So one of the big things that I think has been, a really, kind of a good, pillar has been your innovation hub at UB, right? You've got some money to put that together. So I'm actually really interested to hear, kind of how that came together, because this is a bit more recent, right? And now you've got the infrastructure around it. And how did this kind of coalesce and really kind of bring more of the community growth together?
Yeah, so the Innovation Hub was kind of the next phase of focusing on the entrepreneur growth in Buffalo. So one of the first initiatives that was undertaken to really start to catalyze more entrepreneurship was 43 North, which is a major business plan competition. It was seeded by the state. Actually the largest business plan competition, in that they give away $5 million, not give away, their equity investments.
Yeah.
But the whole thesis was we wanted to quickly catalyze more startup ventures, so they actually attract startups from anywhere around the US or frankly around the world.
Right.
But they have to move to Buffalo, they get an investment, they get incubated, and hopefully they get so connected to the community and have such good experience that they stay and grow their enterprise.
Yeah.
And so that really did start to catalyze and bring more and new ventures and entrepreneurs to the community. And we did find that, I think we're going into our 6th year of 43 North now, that, about 60%, 60 to 70% of the companies stayed and grow that in Buffalo. And now you're starting to see that now they're reinvesting, they're angel investors, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So phase 2 of that was, okay, this is great. We've started to get the kind of entrepreneur engine. We're catalyzing. You could start to see more local entrepreneurs who I think had always maybe wanted to start a venture, but never had the support or resources. And there was an infrastructure growing. And so the final kind of piece was, through the Innovation Hub, how do we now take all of the research and frankly, the students at UB who had entrepreneurial ideas or ventures and enable them to start and grow ventures here. So it was really all more about growing from within, where 43 North was bringing startups to our community. This was, let's take the innovation that happens right here and turn those into new ventures.
Right.
And so, you know, the kind of the key components of the innovation hub were, one, we were able to stand up a really early stage fund. The second was to add a new incubator to house the startups right in downtown on that medical campus. And the third piece was to be able to provide, you know, entrepreneur expertise, mentoring, and support services, because you know, when it's students or being built around a faculty innovation, you have a lot of first-time entrepreneurs. So they need, you know, guidance and support from more experienced people. So it kind of brought those three components together with a focus on not just UB, but all of our research partners like Roswell Park, to be able to really capture those innovations and start ventures around them to grow in our community.
Well, and the students needed to see it happening. It's almost like they have to see it happening to know they can do it too.
Right.
Yeah. It's the whole, if you can't see it, you can't be it phenomenon. Right. So, and that's interesting. So 43, so to rewind a little bit. So 43 North, the grand prize is 5 million.
No, they award 5 million each year. The grand prize is $1 million.
Okay.
And then I think it's usually about everyone else gets 500,000, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So that basically gives you, you know, a crop of 8 or 9 new seeded startups every single year.
Exactly.
What does the application process look like? How many companies kind of apply?
Yeah. So, you know, it's the very first year, it was crazy. I think there was something like 8,000 applicants.
Oh my God.
Yes, it was quite overwhelming. But over the years, what's happened is, you know, like any good initiative, you sort of learn and you refine. And so they've actually moved, you know, the first year also, it was literally an idea competition. A lot of people hadn't even formed their ventures yet that were applying. As we moved, you know, through, and I serve on the board of directors of 43 North, we refined the criteria. So now a company has to be formed. You actually have to have already raised $500,000. So we're moving down the pathway a little bit to
that pares it down a little bit.
And then we've been much more targeted about who we go after. So I think this past year there were around 500 applicants, which was great. I guess I'd say we moved from quantity to quality. If I were to say strategically. And it's, again, we're seeing it in how quickly a number of the companies are growing now, much faster than, you know, in the earlier days.
Okay, and you said, go ahead. You said you're in year 6 now, right?
Yes, I think 6 or 7 actually. Yep.
And what is your, just because I'm curious, what is your demographic of applicants, right? So what percentage are already in New York? What percentage are sort of West Coast, East Coast? Do you have any insight into that? Sorry.
Yes, I don't remember how many are in New York. It's not the largest percentage. They really do come from all over the U.S. We've had a few international over the past. We've had some from Canada, not obviously in the last, you know, couple of years.
18 months.
But no, it's really been geographically dispersed, I would say, although we've focused also on some of the mid-sized cities where maybe they don't have as strong of an entrepreneur support system, but again, have some great startups there, you know. So.
And that's good too, because that also works. I mean, it works in essence as a marketing campaign for the region too, right? Because you have entrepreneurs that find out about this, then they tell other entrepreneurs. So,
honestly, the current portfolio has been one of the best outlets for marketing to others. And then a lot of the accelerators and now over years, frankly, a lot of the venture firms who might see things that they're too early to them, would say, hey, you might want to apply to this competition.
Well, it also works. Now you have quality companies too that are out in the marketplace. I mean, Irfan Khan was an early guest on our program, and if you follow him on social media at all, he credits a lot of what they're doing to 43 North. He's a great spokesman for the competition. So as you go and you build, there's just a much greater level of visibility around the competition, which again, just improves the quality of people that hear about it and improves the attractiveness of why you would want to be involved. So it's almost as you build this, whereas, before, one of the things would probably be, but you have to move to Buffalo. Now people look at that and they say, okay, well, if I do this and we do actually end up going to Buffalo, now it's just part of the solution.
Exactly.
Right. Which makes a ton of sense for now building the innovation hub on top of it. Right. Now you've got this really good grassroots competition, and your innovation hub now starts, I guess, planting the seeds for things that could eventually feed into that, right?
Exactly, right. And the Innovation Hub is focused at the earliest stage. So we do work with people that are literally, I have an idea. Pre-formation, right? We're working with teams, both sort of faculty, research teams, and student teams. And now we've extended the services to entrepreneurs in the community who have, innovative, potentially scalable ideas. But we start at the idea stage, really working with them to, help them understand, is there really a market? Are you solving a real problem? Is there someone that already has something there that you weren't aware of? So, and if it looks like there is, then we will literally help them form the company. We tap into the University of Buffalo as a law school. So we stood up a new entrepreneur law clinic where students are working under a practicing attorney, actually doing all the formation documents and no cost for the startups. So they're started on the right legal foot. Great experience for our students. Again, we're trying to build for the long term. Now we're getting more people experienced in that work, that will hopefully will graduate and stay in Buffalo. So we help form the companies, and then we are often first money in to the companies through the investment fund. And then we built out a cadre of entrepreneurs and residents that really serve as their coaches and what we call startup success managers, but they're basically dedicated kind of client managers that meet with the startup teams on a regular basis, and then can either pull in a subject matter expert if they need it, or an entrepreneur in residence to help them continue on their development. Our goal is basically to get them to the point where they're frankly ready for a 43 North or some other venture fund. We're at that early stage and want to get them ready to successfully go get private investment.
How did you fill out? So like when you started thinking about how to build this program out, how did you find your mentors, your entrepreneurs and residents? How did you decide what expertise you needed for the type of companies you wanted to build there?
Well, we knew we actually had to be broad, which is a little bit of a challenge, right? Because then you need a lot of different expertise. But frankly, when you look at just the research derived innovations, they tend to be, more than 50-60% life sciences. But when you add in the students, they're very heavy on the software. And then we have everything in between. We have renewable energy technologies. We have, robotic, cobotic. We have drone technology. Because we're a comprehensive university, we have a very broad portfolio. So we had to look for EIRs that had expertise. So we certainly have several that are in the life sciences. One from a therapeutic, actually used to be with AMRI, so at the earliest stages of drug development. And another who has been in several biotech early stage companies. But we also brought someone in, who was more on the advanced manufacturing and had done more on kind of hard, physical technologies. And then we have several that are AI software. So we really kind of built a portfolio based on our portfolio, which is very diverse. And then what we did was we kind of have, a lot of them are UB alum or some Buffalo. We definitely leveraged our alum. We have subject matter experts that we pull in on contract on more of a project base. So someone needs help on a regulatory, pathway. We have regulatory expertise. Someone needs help in a particular market segment. And then honestly, the other thing, I don't know if you're familiar, that we use, it's a subscription base called Maven, which has been phenomenal. And basically you can tap in and say, we're looking for experts in whatever, any sector. And they will find them and set up a 30-minute hour call with that expert that you can probe on market questions that you have, strategy. And that's been another way to augment the expertise, which has been super helpful.
Yeah.
And,
No,
and
I've heard of it, but I've never used it. Go ahead,
yeah,
Jennifer.
I haven't either. And I was going to say, I imagine that maybe one piece of bright spot from the pandemic is that you have UB alum that are all over the country that now feel like they can contribute, right? If they can do
Absolutely.
it on
Yeah.
Zoom.
Because you just jump on a Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially now. So so now this is really interesting. So now you've got your network of EIRs, and I can imagine when you launched the seed fund, you got a similar level of interest to launching 43 North, right? Now you just have this absolute flood of people because it's a new source of capital, especially since it's early, right? And what was the initial? So it's 10 million, correct?
10 million. Yep.
Okay. So what were the initial stages like in terms of thinking about what your, I guess, standards were going to be? How did you think about check sizes? How did you think about investment processes? Because I can imagine the wave of interest I can imagine was pretty powerful, especially thinking about how broad things are, right? So how did you manage the early stages of things in terms of, what you thought you were going to get and how you were going to deal with it?
Yeah. So a couple of things to that. First of all, we actually started very narrow to kind of manage that on the front end and make sure that we got everything, all the processes stood up. So initially we narrowed the eligibility to a student-founded company or a licensee from UB or one of our research partners like Roswell
Okay.
Park, right? So that just narrowed the pool of who was eligible. We've now since broadened that, basically any startup venture in the Buffalo area that has a, potential high growth, medium growth company is eligible to apply. And then we'll work out, an affiliation with UB. But
Okay.
so that was strategic on the front end as we were building it out to kind of, manage deal flow. And then our whole thesis was we are at the very front end. We are literally trying to just catalyze more opportunities, good opportunities, and get them ready for future investment. So we will literally do as little as $50,000 in a safe note, up to 250 is generally the largest we will go. We have put some, aside to follow on our better deals, just because obviously we are so early, we're going to get diluted. I would say the other thing that's really important about our fund, because it was funded through a state grant for economic development, although certainly we would like to have a return, over time so that we can keep reinvesting and any money will be able to go back into the fund. We really have an economic development mission. So we can be earliest money, first money, only money, highest risk in, right? Because we're trying to catalyze, and nobody gets the money without also being part of our startup ventures programming, meaning we're working very closely with them on what do you need to do to ensure that you're advancing this to get ready for private, funding. So, it was very strategic that we were at the front end where there's nothing else but angel money, and that's even difficult to come by. And the other thesis was, a lot of time with angel investing, it really is your network and who you know. And from the very beginning, we also wanted to ensure that we're starting to build a much more diverse and inclusive startup community. And UB does have a phenomenal diverse, student body base. So from the very beginning, our programs both were very intentional on making sure we are attracting in minority and women founders. But that's also part of our investment thesis. Like it's not about your friends and family, right? We take place of the angel investor in a sense.
Yeah. So how many years into the fund are you now?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. And how many companies have you done so far?
We are about to do our 8th right now.
Okay.
And we will probably end up doing 20 a year from this point forward, because we just stood up a new, what we call the cultivator, similar to an accelerator program. It's a cohort-based program. That is initially you're in it for 3 months, where again, we're really working on, are you clear on what problem you're trying to solve? Be really clear before you spend too much time in the solution space, because once someone's in the solution space, it's really hard for them to pivot when they're like, they're sold that that's it, right? So we actually spend the first 3 months just in the problem space to make sure you've identified the right problem.
Yeah.
And then if we feel like they have and they're making progress, then a portion of them are invited into the next 6 months where we'll work with them on, you know, building out the plan and getting ready to go get private investment, but we will give them $100,000. So it then comes with money and then space in our incubator. So we're going to run that program. We just launched it this summer. We're going to run that twice a year. So that's why I'm saying we'll probably end up doing you know, our first cohort, we started, I think, with 10 teams. We're doing 5 investments, but as we go forward, we'll probably accept in like 20 teams and do 10 investments. So,
so basically it's a 9-month program.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And we'll kind of every 6 months, though, we'll start the next,
we'll start the next round.
Basically. Yeah. And then the other thing, like I said, is that is not just for UB students or research derived innovations. We're now opening that to our network of incubator partners and entrepreneurs in Western New York.
Yep. Yeah, and that's interesting. And that means in about 3 years, you're going to need fund 2, right?
Exactly. So. Yes, I'm already thinking about that.
Yeah, no, well, you have to now, right? It's one of these things where you can look at where the numbers are going to be, but ultimately, you know, especially if you start with something like this, you want it to be evergreen. You want to see some of the returns come back in, but ultimately you want to be able to point to things and say, look at what we've done in terms of company growth here. And, you know, it's actually, this is actually one of the most interesting times to talk about it, because you can kind of see the acceleration before it happens. Right. So in what you've done so far, have you seen this as a little bit more of a catalyst around the angel community? Because a lot of times, you know, angels don't like to operate in a vacuum, right? They like to see a community and an environment where there is going to be other capital that comes in, and there are going to be things to help their investments grow. So have you really seen that happen?
Yeah, I think it's starting to, where they're looking at it like, okay, now they can turn to what's coming out of our portfolio and say, okay, we know they've been vetted. Right. We know that they've made good progress, because if they're really making it through the program, they have demonstrated that, you know, they've made significant progress in preparing for the market. So yeah, and in fact, you know, we were just talking about the Angel Network in Western New York, and having them meet at our new incubator and move their meetings there, so they can also start to just get to interact and know the portfolio of companies that are there.
Yeah, we think about that a lot, right? And we've seen it through, you know, the various, you know, hubs and research centers that have been put up in New York City. And, you know, my personal pet peeve is I hope that no biotech company ever resides in a WeWork, right? I have the theory that I think all life sciences companies really benefit from being around other companies in the life sciences. You not only get kind of the peer-to-peer interaction on a day-to-day basis, but also when you get folks that come in from the outside, whether they're investors, whether they're partners or whatever, that gives visibility to all of the other life sciences companies that are around you. I mean, we've seen this with the Launch Labs and the J Labs in New York City. And in general, it's just a really healthy thing for life science companies to see, because it's so specific, right? Because you get people that just invest in the life sciences. And it's actually a great way to promote not only what they're doing, but for, you know, the companies to get this greater visibility of knowing, oh, I saw this company at UB, but there's also this other cool company there that's there. It's a great way for other companies to make connections that are just fortuitous when it comes down to it. So as far as this stuff that's coming out of UB, it seemed one of the big things strategically that seemed to put some of this stuff in place was the development of centers of excellence. Right. So between genomics, bioinformatics, you know, material sciences, et cetera, you know, have you found that really helps catalyze, or at least kind of tells a better story of what kind of companies are going to be coming down the pipe and what kinds of research is going to be catalyzed into new ventures?
Absolutely. So we have our Center of Excellence in Bioinformatics and Life Sciences, which was actually UB's first building on the downtown medical campus, opened about 15 years ago. that has real depth in both genomics, proteomics, and it has our Center for Computational Research. So, you know, big data analysis, which is a huge part, obviously, of any aspect of life sciences growth. So yeah, what it's always served as sort of that bridge between academic research and industry partnerships, not just catalyzing and supporting new ventures, but actually we work with a lot of larger companies as well, and in an extension of their R&D in essence. But when we, about 2 years ago, UB built a new medical school on the downtown campus. We always had a medical school. This was just a new building. And that enabled a number of the faculty who were in our Center of Excellence to move into the new medical school. And that freed up about almost 45,000 square feet for us to convert a good portion of that building into an incubator. And it's a mix of wet lab, you know, all the amenities, obviously, that any life science company would need. And then we still, of course, have the Center of Excellence with the genomics and proteomics and computational expertise there. And then we also have office and co-working space. But we have a number of what I'll call anchor tenants that are there that have collaborated extensively with the Center of Excellence, like Thermo Fisher, who we've done a number of projects. They have a very large manufacturing of reagents and cell culture in the Western New York area. A very large division. So they've been working with our genomics and proteomics lab, you know, on characterizing some of their reagents and proprietary cell lines to help improve their manufacturing processes and products. They actually now have a research lab right in our Center of Excellence. And then we also have companies like Phoenix, that was actually one of the earliest spin-outs of UB that's doing cancer drug development. They have 250 people just down the road, but they still have a presence in our Center of Excellence. And we probably have another 10, what I'll call anchor life science companies. So what's nice, Derek, back to your point, is the startups that are co-locating next to them now have more mature and experienced, you know, life science companies that they can work with, that can help them access their networks, that can help them with their technical aspects of development. So we are starting to create this really nice ecosystem. And frankly, if we didn't have the Center of Excellence, not just the building, but the expertise in there to be a draw for those partners, we wouldn't be able to do that. Now it also can serve as an incubator. Another one of our early stage companies is Garwood. I don't know if you've ever.
Oh yeah, no, we know them.
Yep. So they have lab space in our incubator, and then of course they now are standing up their manufacturing and headquarters a few miles away, but they continue to do all their research out of our lab. And again, just, you know, they've licensed technology from UB. We've given them, through some of our programs, a number of matching grants where basically we can pay 50% of their cost to help them do development work with some of the faculty at UB. So they've hired numerous students where we've paid for interns to work that they've ultimately hired. So, you know, there's a lot of benefits for kind of being part of this ecosystem where you can access the research expertise. Everyone needs talent. So we always place students. They kind of get preferential treatment and access, frankly, to students, you know, through being a partner with us as well.
I think you all were working on I was gonna say, the last time we were up there, which now, I mean, it's crazy to sound, I mean, it was October of 2019, just, you know, of COVID. But I think you all were in the process of your renovations then. So we look forward to coming back in person.
We're due. We should do this more than every, certainly I hope our frequency increases more than every 2 years. And this time we'll hopefully not have a pandemic that gets in the way of, the next one. Right. So the next thing too, is you've now also got a partnership with the Empire Discovery Institute. And, you know, Martin Graham is on our board, and that's a really exciting initiative. We just, you know, Deerfield just partnered with them as well. So, you know, can you talk a little bit about how that came to fruition? And you know, it's not like they're right around the corner. Rochester is a decent drive from Buffalo, but why don't you tell us a little bit about how you see that partnership working and how, you know, I guess these things can just kind of build on each other.
Absolutely. That's been a great partnership. And you're right, Derek. What all of these things, right? They're all different pathways to commercialize more innovations.
Yeah.
And so you certainly know better than anyone just how challenging and still expensive it is to bring a therapeutic to market. And the startup path can be one, but certainly, you know, a long and expensive path. So Empire Discovery Institute really provides an alternative path, which, you know, ultimately will, I think, shorten the time to market. So really how it came about is Maria Mitchell, if I'm sure you all know her from Empire State Development that leads their life sciences. You know, she reached out and said, hey, there's this development corporation, I always forget, but try TDI Downstate, right? Which is the partnership. Yeah, there. She said, it's really interesting. I want you to come and look at it with Roswell. And she tapped into University of Rochester. So the three of us went down to New York many times and very generously, the team at TDI spent many hours with us talking to us about their model. And, you know, the three of us, University of Rochester, Roswell, and UB, again, with Maria and Empire State Development's support, really said this could be huge. You know, this model could be extraordinarily impactful for our communities in bringing more of our life science therapeutics to the market. And fill those, you know, gaps on early stage funding and the depth of expertise, in particular upstate experienced people that have brought therapeutics to the market. We're still pretty limited, right? That have gone all the way. So it really solved those two things. By, you know, forming this corporation, Martin Graham himself, and he has just brought in a fantastic advisory board of experienced pharma and biotech expertise. The state seeded it, so we had the earliest money to start getting projects going. And you can see, right, by the three of us, we're much stronger together. Individually, we all certainly had great, you know, life science research and innovation, but when you put the three of us together, we're, you know, much more significant. And I think that's what attracted folks like Deerfield. You know, now they can look at a broader portfolio of opportunities. And soon we'll announce a partnership with our first pharma company. You know, same thing. I think they're looking for ways to amalgamate, you know, and have someone to partner with that's sort of doing some of that early due diligence, and co-investing with them on these opportunities. So it's just been fantastic. UB has our first two projects that we're accepted in and are going through EDI, and the PIs that are working with them. I think certainly the money has been helpful, but the expertise that they're getting has been incredible in developing the technologies.
It's really, it really is a recipe. I mean, you have to have all the pieces of a recipe, particularly in life sciences, right? I mean, it's not like you're making a widget and it either does what you think it's going to do or it doesn't, right? And then it's so much more than that. So having that level of expertise across the three institutions, plus what Martin's been able to pull together from an EDI perspective is pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, I always loved that model, and, you know, Mike Foley, who was the original head of the TDI, then moved to Deerfield. Like Mike recognizes how powerful that model is. And even from what you said before, if you think about this, all of the things that you guys are doing are things that drop the cost of capital on the innovation, right? You've got, and as an entrepreneur, all of these things make a difference. Access to talent, you know, paying student, you know, the hands in the lab to actually do things. All of those costs add up when you're doing when you look at the amount of money that you've raised. Everyone does this. You calculate your burn. You look at you know the exact day that your company runs out of money, right? And you know, all of these things that extend that date and give you more time to innovate and deal with the things that come up, right? You can call them problems, you can call them challenges, you can call them opportunities, you can call them whatever you want, but they're going to happen. And they're going to happen, and they're going to get in the way of that great strategic plan that you put together. So all of these things that help you push that out, give you more time and more flexibility to kind of find the impact or get over that hump are all huge additions to a startup company.
Yeah, and trying to preserve, like you said, I mean, every dollar is worth so much, right? So our incubation rates are extraordinarily low. I mean, we're $36 fully built out lab space with all the amenities, you know, we pay for interns, we provide matching grants to help offset your development costs. It really, you know, and of course, and then we have an investment, but even outside of the investment vehicle, there's so much value we're able to provide, you know, through these assets to help companies.
Can we take a little bit of a step back? And when we're thinking about entrepreneurs, what we've seen in other academic institutions is, you know, historically, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you had to raise your hand, you had to figure out that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. And now we're seeing academic institutions start to sort of facilitate that, like whether it's running a course or a seminar or something like that to really kind of encourage people to think about their work that way. What all are you doing at the University at Buffalo?
Yep. So I'm going to give you two different things because they're different for student facing versus faculty facing, right? So student facing, we partnered with Blackstone Foundation, and we were one of the first, what they call launchpads, student entrepreneur centers. They originally chose 19 universities across the US, and we launched ours about 6 years ago. And so really what that enabled us to do was significantly add student entrepreneur experiences. It's all hands-on. It's everything from, you could come for as little as an hour and hear from another entrepreneur, how their story, right? To you could do a semester long outside of your coursework, right? So you're meeting like weekly, but a semester long accelerator where we're helping you build your business strategy. Right. So over the 5 years that Blackstone Launchpad has been in existence, they now touch about 6,000 students a year out of our 30,000 that participate in at least one of their programs. And what that's doing is we're now seeing a steady stream of students starting companies coming out of that. And then they come into our portfolio of now we have the incubation, the programming, and the fund. So it really did take, to your point, reaching out to them and creating completely different ways to get them thinking about, oh, I could actually start my own venture, and here's how. Or if not, at the minimum, they are gaining phenomenal entrepreneurial skills on problem solving, teamwork, communication that they're going to take with them, you know, into their career anywhere that's going to be beneficial. So that's been a huge part of really catalyzing a lot more coming from the students. And then we work to connect them into the broader entrepreneur ecosystem. On the faculty side, of course, we have I-Core. And so that's, you know, one way to just start to introduce them again to the concepts around market and trying to understand if their technology has, you know, a place in the market and how it might move forward. And so that's been helpful, and getting more faculty. But really our focus on faculty is more enabling them to continue to do what they do really well, which is focus on the technical aspects. And we try to bring in the business lead, either through our entrepreneurs and residents or finding someone else. Sometimes it can be certainly their graduate postdoc student that has more of that entrepreneur aptitude. That we can train, but for the most part, we're really looking for, and faculty frankly went in to become faculty for a reason, right? So for the most part, we're trying to say, leverage your expertise in the technical and let us help have someone come in that can deal, you know, really focus on the business side of it. And that's when it works best, frankly, you know, when you have that good partnership.
You're like almost like the scientific founder, and then you're building a team around their original work product, which will ultimately,
So throughout all of this, what was the hardest thing you had to do, right? What was the toughest puzzle piece to put in place? What was the most difficult one?
That's a great question.
You make it sound very easy. You're not allowed to tell us it was. you have made all of this sound like, well, yeah, we just developed this plan and then
Oh
we just
yeah,
did it and it was
no.
all fine. Like it's not allowed. You can't tell us that's the answer.
There had to be something that wasn't linear.
Yeah, something had to not work here.
Well, I think there were I mean, honestly, there's lots of things that we learned along the way. I think one of them was early on, we were trying to have the faculty be the lead entrepreneur.
Yep.
And I think we quickly learned that for the most part, that is not the recipe for success for them or the venture, right? There are exceptional, folks that are more inclined, but again, most of them that's not, they want to focus on their research. So that was one of them, and starting to really build out that portfolio of EIRs and bringing in more of the business lead. In that we're continuing to build out. Kind of the next piece of that, we're looking at actually kind of creating our own team, our own like development corp in a way where we would have a paid team that can take it to a certain point. So I think that'll be the next phase for us around certain verticals with industry partners. But that, that was a challenge. I would also just say timing, this will be an ongoing challenge. Certainly with life sciences, you understand that still time to market is, several years, not months. So we're not going to have returns soon enough. I am going to need to raise another fund. We're at the earliest stages of building entrepreneur ecosystem, building entrepreneurs. So while we've had tremendous gains in just a few years, this is about the long game. So continuing to kind of make sure everyone stays in the boat and sees, look, we're making really good progress. You can see it in the number of companies starting, in the number of people becoming entrepreneurs, but we're not at the point where we have all the exits yet, right? So keeping people in the boat until we have those big outcomes is going to be the other piece, and just showing like there's absolutely very clear, demonstrable progress being made.
Right.
Yep. Head down until you see exits types of things.
Exactly. Yep. And so, everything we can do to more quickly advance people along that pathway is what we're focused on doing.
We talked about one of the bright spots of COVID being that you could access expertise, sort of everywhere. What have been some of the challenges? Have you all, did you all already do a lot of work with people that were coming over the Canadian border and like working in Buffalo? Has that been impacted, or has anything else been really difficult?
We didn't do as much work. Certainly the region historically has had quite a bit of Canadian companies that come over and locate as kind of their beachhead in the US. And that has certainly seen a disruption. Like everyone else, sort of labs were shut for a period of time, it certainly delayed our renovation of the incubator, but that's now open. So in many ways, I guess if you try to find the silver linings, the increase in engagement in students in entrepreneur activities actually went up online, highest numbers ever, because I think it just provided more flexibility in different ways for them to engage. And we have not seen any kind of decline in, more of the research-derived innovation. I think it's opened up broader avenues to tap into people who aren't local. Like one of our EIRs is actually based in North Carolina. He just came up for the first time ever, but he's been successfully working with a portfolio of teams for a year. And we do a hybrid of some of our cohort for the cultivator. Some of the meetings are online, and then they come together like once a month in person. So in many ways, it's opened up avenues to work differently, which is increased engagement. And who we can engage with. Because people are just so much more comfortable saying, I'll just jump on a Zoom, and they could be located anywhere.
That's flattened everything out a lot. So we think a lot about, we've now been doing this program for close to 18 months, right? I mean, it's been a long time. And we would like to see more engagement from, folks in Buffalo. We'd like to engage with folks in Buffalo more. So if you had to recommend who are three people we should reach out to be on this program, who should they be?
I would say Michael Kane. He's the dean of our medical school. He's actually just stepping down, but he has been the dean through tremendous growth of the medical school. So I think he'd have a really interesting perspective more on education and sort of where things are headed from that perspective. Andy Campbell, he's with the large Thermo Fisher cell culture. They're head of R&D. I think, again, probably the fastest growing life science company, over probably 1,200 employees in Western New York now. And obviously part of a huge global, organization. And then the other one would be Matt Colpois. He is an entrepreneur in residence with us, but has started and or been part of probably more than a half a dozen life science startups in Western New York. And he's seen everything from working with faculty when they just have an idea through to raising money and helping negotiate strategic ventures with some of our life sciences. So I think you'd have a really interesting portfolio of ventures to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And I think we once now that travel is now slightly more normal, I think we should be making a trip up to see you guys in person at some point soon.
Absolutely, love to host you guys at the new incubator. And
I know.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got a little feedback on the thing. So we have a couple minutes left, and with that, I would say if you could kind of snap your fingers and make kind of one thing true in Buffalo over the next kind of 2 to 3 years that you think would be really impactful for the community, what would it be?
Wow.
You don't get a magic wand very often.
Yeah, okay. I know, I love the magic wand. I would say probably continued and even accelerated growth of people coming to Buffalo to locate. Yeah. So the in population, like I said, the population, we're finally seeing it, but I would say it's a talent war out there right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Everyone knows that. So not only retaining more of our student talent in the region, but attracting more, especially kind of the 7 to 10 year with experience, that, people really, now that they're mobile and they're like, I could live anywhere that I want, that they look at Buffalo and say, that's actually a really cool place to live. Yeah. And, that would be the one thing I would say. If we continue to significantly accelerate the number of people moving into the region, that would be most impactful. Yep.
Now it turns up the heat, and it kind of, it raises all the boats, right? You get this influx, and all of the growth now, it becomes more visible. You see more people picking it up press wise. You just have more buzz around it. And it's interesting. You look around in the early stages of these things, and you're excited about what you're doing. And then when it hits a point in the growth, you actually look around and realize how many other people are recognizing where it is. Yeah. And then you kind of see the wave in front of you, and you can kind of see where it's going. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah. So, and really, to enable the growth of a lot of these ventures we're starting, they're going to need the talent, so.
Yeah. It's like this flywheel that you have to create, right? So
totally.
Constant replenishment of the talent. And although I don't know if I would use turn up the heat as it relates to Buffalo.
Yeah. Well, listen, Buffalo's cold. Like, you could use a little more heat. It keeps everybody, I think people in Buffalo would enjoy turning up the heat in the winter.
Hey, we're in like a good pocket, where we have fresh water, we have 4 beautiful seasons, but not a lot of natural disasters. So
well, that's good.
And having had our streets turn into rivers, where I live in Westchester last week, and 6-8 feet of water in everyone's basement. Yeah. So that hey, maybe I need to come to Buffalo.
That's right.
With climate change going the way it is, who knows? Maybe fewer natural disasters is going to be a decent kind of city tagline. But I hope we digress.
Christina, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was fantastic to really learn about the catalyzation that you all are providing for your region. It's very impressive, and we look forward to helping you continue that as New York Bio and what we can do.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer and Derek. Nice to see you.
Right. Thanks, Christina.
Everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to New York Bio's virtual breakfast series. Join us every Tuesday at 9 a.m. for more discussions with leaders from across the healthcare spectrum. For more information on New York Bio, please visit us at www.newyorkbio.org.